and becomes the first government in the entire world to move his embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. What could possibly go wrong? And Brexit, deal or no deal? All coming up in the next 3 hours on the Mother of All Talkshows.
3 hours of revolutionary repartee, colorful conversation, and an unmistakable whiff of expensive cologne. The Mother of All Talkshows with George Galloway on talkRADIO.
Donald Trump has trumped everyone by being the first American president, though every one since 1973 has promised to do so, to actually move or declare that he's going to move the US Embassy from Tel Aviv to occupied Jerusalem. He declared that Jerusalem was now the capital of Israel. Both decisions are rejected by every other government in the entire world, including the Vatican and the United Nations and anyone with a brain cell or two to rub together. What could possibly go wrong in breaching international law, in breaking United Nations resolutions by the score, in telling the 1.8 billion Muslims in the world that their second holiest place will now be under the control forever of Benjamin Netanyahu and his heirs and successors? What could go wrong in telling the Catholic Church, the Greek Orthodox Church, the Russian Orthodox Church, that the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which has a block of stone on which Jesus' blood is stained, will now no longer be occupied territory, but annexed territory, recognized by the most powerful government in the world? What could possibly go wrong for the crowned heads of Arabia, whose obeisance, not just to Donald Trump, but to a whole array of US presidents before him, who will be held by their people to have paved the way with their pusillanimity to this catastrophe? It is, as I frequently warned in Parliament, Jerusalem is a powder keg waiting to explode, and it's almost completely misunderstood, or no understanding at all is present in the Western world about the importance of this matter, both to the Eastern churches and the Universal Catholic Church, but also to the 1.8 billion Muslims, who are likely to kick up rather more of a stink about it than the Christian leaders. Now, why did Donald Trump do this? First of all, it's a look over there moment as the Russia probe probes on, and it must be becoming rather painful now, that probe, because it's getting closer and closer to Tiny Hands himself. So it's a diversion, a kind of wag the dog. It's not the first time that that's been done. Bill Clinton killed a friend of mine, the finest woman painter in the Arab world, Layla Al-Attar. He killed her, Bill Clinton, with a cruise missile down her chimney, killed her, blinded her husband, killed her household staff, and all because a stain had emerged, if you'll forgive the phrase, on his girlfriend Monica Lewinsky's dress. It was a clear diversion. So that's the first reason why Donald Trump has done it. The second reason that he's done it, and this is something that many friends of mine even haven't fully grasped. When I talk about the Israel lobby in the United States, or for that matter in Britain, I am not talking about Jewish people. As a matter of fact, opposition to Israel amongst American Jews has never ever been higher. And the younger an American Jew is, the more likely they are to find Netanyahu and his gang utterly repugnant. No, the vast majority of the Israel lobby, which has such power in the United States, is Christian, although I'd have to put some heavy quotation marks around that. These are, after all, the people that think that Donald Trump is a tribune, a Spartacus for Christians in America, and manage to completely ignore every satanic act that he has ever committed and every sin with which he is dripping. These quote-unquote Christians are the religious right in America, the evangelical maniacs who wanted Trump to do that because it would bring the day of the rapture, the return of Jesus after the battle of Armageddon, that it would bring it on. These people say, end of the world, bring it on. They want the end of the world. And of course, the irony of ironies is that in the minds of these evangelical maniacs, and we've got one or two of them in this country, one of whom used to phone up this show, is no longer welcome. These evangelical maniacs, I say for the third time, want to bring about the end of the world, because then Jesus will come back. And what is it that they believe that Jesus' first act will be? It will be to kill all the Jews, unless they convert to quote-unquote Christianity. So, you might think that these evangelicals support what calls itself the Jewish state, rather as the rope supports the hanging man. But there are 30, 40, 50 million of these evangelical maniacs, fourth time, in the United States, and Trump badly needs them. And lastly, he did it because he knew there would be a phenomenal backlash across the Muslim world, and there has been in every part of the world. In Turkey today, 1 million people out demonstrating in Istanbul, people being shot down dead in Gaza, the occupied territories on fire, and trust me, it won't be long before that fire spreads. But Trump wanted that. Why did he want it? Because he wants to define, he wants to create a dichotomy in which Muslims are on one side and he is on the other. That's what the Muslim ban was all about, and that's partly what this recognition of Jerusalem is all about. On one level, it changes nothing. After all, Israel has been illegally, militarily occupying East Jerusalem since 1967, when the Beatles were top of the charts, and the Beatles are more than 40 years dead. And so all that's happened is that America has given its validation to this criminal act. It doesn't change international law. It doesn't expunge the United Nations Security Council resolutions. In that sense, it changes nothing. That's why I'm going to take a left field approach to this, and we'll see if my guests agree. I believe that this will backfire massively, both on Donald Trump and the United States that he's supposed to represent, and on Israel itself. It may awaken the comatose, huge Muslim populations of the world, and in particularly the Arab world, for whom sectarian division and war and mass murder has been the number one priority over these last 5 or 6 years. It may just refocus attention on a rather important place, the place where Muslims believe the Prophet Muhammad ascended to the heavens to collect the revelation, and to which he returned on a white horse. That's the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is now under very grave danger of being undermined by completely fruitless archaeological digging and the regular rapacious invasion of Israeli settlers who would very much like to demolish it. And if they did, that really would be Armageddon. Trust me on that. So we'll be discussing Donald Trump and Jerusalem in the course of the next 3 hours, but that's not all we'll be discussing. Theresa May has returned like Chamberlain himself, waving a piece of paper and declaring peace in our time. In fact, just as Chamberlain did, Theresa May has betrayed the British people who voted for a clean exit from the European Union just a year or so ago. She has agreed to pay a king's ransom that is desperately needed on this cold winter night to keep old people warm so that they don't have to choose between heating and eating, to put breakfast and lunch in the tummies of our school children, poor school children. I've just been elected a parent governor in a school in London. I know what I'm talking about. There are plenty of our own children going to school hungry. And this Conservative government has just agreed to pay £40 billion for Peter Mandelson's pension. And after he goes, his widow's pension. And Neil Kinnock's pension. And after he goes, oh no, wait a minute, Glenys Kinnock's got her own pension. So how does that work? If Neil dies, she gets a double pension. If Glenys dies, he gets a double pension. That's the kind of thing we have agreed to fund. In the case of pensions, practically ad infinitum. And she has agreed that the European courts will still be able to reign supreme over British laws. And according to the SNP leader, Nicola Sturgeon, a rampant anti-Brexiteer, it paves the way for agreement to stay in the single market and stay in the customs union. Now, let me again go left field. If we're going to stay in the single market, and if we're going to stay in the customs union, there's no point in leaving the EU at all. Because doing what I've just explained would give you all of the obligations and all of the responsibilities that exist for member states, but none, zero, of the influence or power such as it is that comes with being a member. So if we're staying in the single market and we're staying in the customs union, then we're staying in the European Union. And I don't believe that that is what the British people voted for. 17.4 million of them just a year or so ago. It will provoke many changes if it happens inside the Labour Party, inside the Conservative Party, may give a shot in the arm to UKIP, particularly if Nigel Farage, as his great friend Aaron Banks is predicting on Twitter this evening, if Nigel Farage returns to the front line as the leader of UKIP, well, this game may not be over yet. This show is far from over. I'm here till 10 o'clock, between 7 and 10, every Friday night. It's the mother of all talk shows.